What is up, everybody? Welcome to the MMA Engine and welcome to Probability for UFC Vegas 60. Really looking forward to this show. A ton of spots that are sticking out. If you do like violence, you are absolutely going to love some UFC Vegas 60. I'm here with Uncle Weezy. Weezy, how you doing today?
I've been better, man. We got some bad news in the MMA community today with Elias Theodorou passing away at the very, very young age of 34 years old. Rest in peace to the Spartan, one of the guys who most eloquently advocated for the use of marijuana for UFC fighters. Something that they really should have been doing a very long time ago. And Brady, that in my stats, if somebody gets a win taken away for the use of marijuana, it doesn't get taken away in my stats. And Elias is a guy who actually bridged that gap for UFC fighters and allowed them to be able to use marijuana now and not be suspended for it. So rest in peace, Elias Theodorou, gone way, way too soon, man. That is a very sad day for MMA. But when life gives us lemons, we got to make lemonade. And there are a lot of good props here for this card. 14 fights, a lot of really interesting matchups, Brady. We're going to comb through this fight by fight and find a way to stack cash tickets like flapjacks on the time props for UFC Vegas 60.
Yeah, it felt like Christmas today with these time props dropping. I mean, just like so many gifts from the bookies, and I kind of thought maybe it's because football season's back. Maybe they didn't even look into any of the fights or anything like that, because that's what it kind of looks like with some of these lines. So, yeah, lots of spots sticking out. Can't wait to talk through with you. I have a lot of bets already. I know you have a lot of bets already, so it should be a fun show. Before we get started, guys, if you guys can please leave a like on the video, subscribe here to the MMA Engine. It is always appreciated a ton. I do want to shout out the chat before we get started. The chat is bumping in here saying, rest in peace, Elias. I agree. Just very, very sad situation. Only 34 years old, just crazy. But we got Tommy in here. We got Victor. We got Dope Space Cowboy. We got Lou Betcha. We got Jeff, Raw Torque. We have MMA Propaholic, Andy Mush. Appreciate all you guys saying. Now we got Jeff as well. So yeah, today we get into it, and we will start with the first fight of the card. We'll go with Nicholas Mata. Is that what you have? Weezy Mata versus Van Camp?
Yeah, because if you look at UFC stats, which I have here on the screen, I'm going in the order which they have it, which will probably be switched 4 times between now and Saturday. But this is the official UFC stats order, so let's go in that one.
All right, so that's what we will go off of. So yeah, Nicholas Mata going against Cameron Van Camp. We have the over-under is set at, looks like 2.5 rounds, and this is on 5 dimes. So BetOnline still does not have a over-under, or any props at all. So the over 2.5 on 5 dimes is plus 110. The under 2.5 is minus 140. The fight goes decision on 5 dimes is plus 145. The fight doesn't go to decision is minus 145. This is one that, violence definitely does stick out. Both of these guys are very good finishers. Both these guys can absolutely be finished. So I'll be taking a look at the violence here. I'm going to be waiting to see what BetOnline puts this under 2.5 out at, but this was one of the ones I kind of had circled. So Weezy, what is sticking out in the first fight of the night?
Yeah, let's just zoom in just a little bit more here so that everybody can see what's going on. Minus 185, about a 65% implied probability. The minus 140, about 58.33. And we can see when we compare those implied probabilities, Brady, to the long-term benchmark for fight doesn't go in under 2.5 for 3-round fights in the 155-pound division, we're overpaying by 14.3% and almost 12% here. But when we compare these guys' UFC finish rates to the implied probabilities of the line, we're still getting a break here at 8.33% and 1.75%, but it definitely looks like at minus 140, if you're looking for the violence, that's much better priced. We're getting 8.33% here, but only 1.75% here. We're overpaying by less than 12% here, but we're overpaying by more than 14% here. So the under 2.5 is a little bit better price in comparison to the minus 185 fight doesn't go to decision. And we can see here that we're underpaying for the over 2.5 and the fight goes when we compare those implied probabilities to the benchmark for the division. But we can see here that when we compare the fighters' histories to these benchmarks and to the implied probabilities, that we are definitely probably going to want to stay away from the non-violence lines here. In addition to that, Mata is a striker. The guy is got a ton of power in his hands, and his left hook is absolutely nasty. And Cameron Van Camp's a guy who has finished 60% of his career wins by submission, and he's got an 87% finish rate as a whole, as we can see right here, 13 of 15 wins inside the distance. So these guys, as pros, are finishing at almost a 78% in their wins and 70% in their losses. So we got almost a 72% finish rate for these two guys as professionals, but only 3 fights at the UFC level. So we can't really use too much of the UFC stats, but Mata's a great striker with a ton of power in his hands, and Van Camp's a really slick grappler with great chokes. Striker versus grappler is a great archetype to bet on for violence. And we can see down here that, for the division, we're getting a 50% finish rate, a 46.61% under 2.5 rate. And we're overpaying for that by quite a bit when we compare it to the implied probabilities of the lines. But I think the stylistic matchup of this one lends itself to violence. And we can see that according to the prop template, we're getting just a nicer deal on the under 2.5. So the under 2.5 at minus 140 is probably my favorite bet for this fight.
Yep, I like it as well. And then I'll be looking at the props later in the week for the Mata props, because I think Mata does knock out this guy. Van Camp, what does he have, like a 29% striking defense thus far?
29.17. If my memory is serving me correctly here, Brady, it's awful. It's absolutely awful. And he keeps his chin straight up in the air. If you watch that Van Camp Fialho fight, you hear Joe Rogan talking about how he had watched the tape on Van Camp, and when he gets into the exchanges, his chin's just right up there in the air. And boy, if you do that against Nick Mata, that is such a bad idea.
Yeah, and Mata hasn't got a knockout in his last couple fights. I mean, he didn't knock out Jim Miller, but he did hurt him in the first round, and he also hurt the guy in the Contender Series in the first round. Hasn't been able to put them out, but yeah, the 29% striking defense, chin up in the air, like you said. His hands are down. His hands are like down as well. So just a recipe for disaster. So I'll be looking at the under. Hopefully get it around minus 140, minus 135. Propaholic says he has that minus 135. I like that. And then also Mata by knockout is something I'll be highly considering. So should be a very good first fight of the night. I'll move on to the next one. This is one that I'm curious to get your thoughts on, because I'm kind of thinking violence on this one too. We have Tony Gravely going against Javid Basharat. We have the over-under is set at 2.5 rounds. On Bet Online, the over 2.5 is minus 110. The under 2.5 rounds is minus 120. The fight goes to decision is plus 115. The fight doesn't go to decision is minus 145. And yeah, this is a fight where I'm kind of leaning violence. It's just a tough one because we've never seen Javid lose. He's undefeated and never been knocked out, never been submitted, obviously. Whereas Tony Gravely, he has a 56% finish rate. He's been finished in 6 of 7 losses. And Javid does have a 92% finish rate. Javid's last fight against Trevin Jones was the very first time he's ever went the distance as well. So I think we might be getting a decent price on this fight. Doesn't go. Both guys are super dangerous. Javid has knockout power, great submission game, and Tony Gravely hits like a truck in his own right. So I'm kind of thinking inside the distance here, but I'm curious to see what the prop template says, Weezy.
Yeah, so when our eyes, Brady, tell us, oh man, I like violence here, we expect to be overpaying in this line 9 of the spreadsheet here. That's the divisional finish rate at 135 pounds for 3-round fights. So, and then we subtract that we subtract the fight doesn't go to decision implied probability from that finish rate. And we can see here that the division finishes at a little bit worse than 50%, but we're paying 59%. And that the division under 2.5 rate is 43.14%, and we're paying 54. So, obviously we're going to overpay for lines when they tell us that, our eyes are telling us that this thing is going to go under. But we can take comfort in the fact that we know that 2/3 of their combined UFC fights have finished inside the distance here. As we can see the number right down here, 6 of 9 have finished inside the distance. That's 66.67%. When we subtract the implied probability of the line, where we're only paying 59.18%, that's a 7.5% break. And it's a 17.5% break when we compare how these guys finish fights at the 135-pound weight class to what the division does. So it's definitely trying to overprice these bets at minus 145 and minus 120. But we can see that the fight doesn't go, only overpriced by 10%. This one overpriced by 11.5%. So we're getting a little bit of a break here. And check this out. The fight doesn't go at 7.5% underpriced, the under 2.5 when we compare the rates of the fighters to the implied probability of the line. We're actually overpaying by 10%, which tells us that Javid Basharat and Tony Gravely have both finished fights in the last 2.5 minutes of a 3-round fight. So the fight goes, or the fight doesn't go, is the best bet here, with a 7.5% break here and a 17.5% break here. And we're only overpaying by 10% when one of the fighters, Brady, Javid Basharat, is a kill or be killed fighter. And we also got to keep in mind, Javid Basharat, one of Lou Betya's favorite fighters. And you know Lou Betya likes violence. So we got a guy who's finished 11 of 12 pro fights inside the distance. And we got a guy in Gravely who puts on a pace and who's got power in his hands in his own right. And 5 of his 7 UFC fights have finished inside the distance. So it's definitely a spot where if this line opens around minus 145 or even hopefully a little bit better than that, I think it's a good bet. And it's something we should be putting in the PRP, somewhere in the middle of the range.
I like it. Yeah, that's something I will probably be hopping on. Right now, they do have it on Bet Online, minus 145. Going to check and see what they have for 5 dimes. So 5 dimes is minus 150. Bet Online is minus 145. Minus 145 looks to be the best price out there. That is something that I'll probably be jumping on sometime this week. Nothing that I'm too excited about, but it just makes a ton of sense. I think this fight does finish inside the distance more often than not. All right, move on to the next fight here. We have Maria Agapova going against Jillian Robertson. And shout out to Lou Betya because Maria Agapova is his girl. He says he apparently likes them crazy, and you cannot get any more crazy than one Maria Agapova. So this should be a fun fight. We have the over-under set at 2.5 rounds. The over 2.5 plus 110. The under 2.5 is minus 140. The fight goes to decision plus 155. The fight doesn't go to decision is minus 195. This is one that I kind of was refreshing all morning to get. I was hoping to get the under at plus money. Luckily enough, they did open up the under at plus 110. I was able to hop on. I was actually on the toilet when I saw the lines drop, so I had to hurry up, run to my laptop, and just place the bet. But I was able to get it. So I was able to get the under 2.5 rounds at plus money. That has moved since then. It is currently minus 140, and just makes a ton of sense. I think it's pretty simple. Robertson, black belt in BJJ. I think she can get on top and finish Agapova. Agapova looked pretty bad on bottom against Marina Moroz. And then on the feet, Agapova is going to have a pretty big advantage. I think somebody's getting finished here. But yeah, these violence lines are starting to get smashed. The fight doesn't go. We talked about it last night on Stat Tickers. It was minus 185. It is now minus 195. We typically do not see women's MMA fights with juiced fight doesn't go lines unless it's like a Liang Na. So I'm curious to see what the prop template says about this one, Weezy.
Yeah, well, what do you got for the fight goes in the over 2.5 right now, just so I can get the numbers right, because they've definitely moved.
Yep, over 2.5 is plus 110.
Okay.
And then the fight goes is plus 155.
155. Dude, they're begging us to bet overs. The bookies are fucking begging us, Brady. Look at this. We're getting a 20% break against the benchmark for the division for fight goes. So what it's telling us is the fight goes to decision 20% higher than what the implied probability of the line is. So almost 60% of these fights go to decision. We're only paying 39%. But then when we compare Agapova and Jillian Robertson at the UFC level, we can see down here that only 29.41% of their 17 combined fights have went to decision. So 29.4%, and we're paying 39%. So we're actually overpaying by about 10%. And we see that these ladies are going to decision at a 30% lower rate than what the division goes to decision. So these are two violent ladies. Jillian Robertson is violent because she's a great submission grappler and she's good at getting fights to the ground. Maria Agapova is violent because she's got a fucking screw loose, and she's the kind of woman who wake you up, not unlike Lorraine Bracco woke up Henry Hill in the movie Goodfellas, where he wakes up and she's straddling him and there's a gun pointed in his face. And she starts, asking him questions about the ladies that he's been spending time with. That would be every morning if you woke up with Maria Agapova in your bed. So you got a psychopath against a really good submission grappler here. Everything is screaming violence, but look at it, man. The bookies are on top of it. Oh, yeah. We're overpaying by almost 26% here when you compare the implied probability of the line to the divisional finish rate, which is 41%. We're paying 66%. The under 2.5 rate for the division is 36%, and we're paying 58%. So, but even then, we're still underpaying when we compare the under 2.5 rates of these two ladies to the implied probability of the line, and the fight doesn't go to the implied probability of the line. So it's actually still bettable here at minus 195. Maybe it's a parlay piece, but I feel like we missed out on the line. But still, I feel like maybe that under 2.5 is just a little bit better priced because we're only overpaying by 22 instead of 25%, and we're getting a 6% break instead of a 4.5% break. So let's call the under 2.5 at minus 140 the best bet for this fight right now, and we will also call it PRP worthy.
Let's go. I like it. I like some violence here. Should be a really fun fight. Actually, really looking forward to this one. All right, I'll move on to the next one. We have Trey Ogden going against Daniel Zellhuber. So Bet Online, I think there's two fights where they don't have any props at all. They don't have the overs or the unders. So we have to take a look at some 5-dimes here. So Zellhuber and Ogden. So we have the fight goes to decision plus 100. The fight doesn't go is minus 140. The over 2.5 is minus 120. The under 2.5 rounds is minus 110. So I put a pretty decent sized bet on one Daniel Zellhuber. So I don't think I'll be touching this one from a prop perspective, probably just sit on that money line. But I kind of do lean this fight ending inside the distance. Ogden's been finished a good amount of times. Zellhuber, he's undefeated, never been finished. But, I think Zellhuber can knock him out. I think he can submit him. And if Ogden does win this fight, it probably is by sub. So I think violence for me, if anything. But let's see what the prop template says. Maybe something really sticking out on this one.
Yeah, so let's just take a look because we've only got 2 UFC fights combined for Ogden and Zellhuber, and they both went to decision. So we kind of have to look at the career finish rates. And look, these guys are finishers, right? Ogden, 70% finish rate for and against, 75% for Zellhuber. So, these guys are finishing their pro fights at almost a 72% rate. And we're getting a 58% rate for the fight doesn't go to decision. So I guess the question is, does the stylistic matchup, kind of push us towards violence or not here? And from what I've seen, Brady, this looks like striker versus grappler. If you look at Trey Ogden, for instance, he's never knocked out an opponent, if I'm not mistaken. I believe all of his finish wins are by submission. And then if you look at a guy like Zellhuber, which we can do right here, we can see Zellhuber's got a 58% knockout rate and a 17% sub rate. So he's a little bit more of a equal opportunity finisher, but when you watch the tape on Zellhuber, man, the striking is good, right? So I kind of feel like Ogden's probably going to need to get this fight to the ground, seeing as he lost minutes on the feet to one Jordan Levitt. So that's a problem when you're fighting a striker the quality of Zellhuber, and not to mention the dude's super long too and big for the division. So the stylistic matchup, in my opinion, lends itself to violence. And I think that we'll get underpriced violence props in this fight due to the fact that both of these guys have went to decision in their only UFC contests. So at minus 140, we're overpaying by about 7.77% when we compare it to the benchmark. And because neither of these guys have went to decision, or have finished inside the distance, we're overpaying based on the very small sample size by a ton for that. But like I said, it's a 2-fight sample size, and we know Zellhuber finishes more fights than he doesn't, and we know Trey Ogden finishes more fights than he doesn't, and Ogden has been finishing 3 of his 5 losses. So this is one I'm leaning violence on, but we barely have any markets available right now, and we've got a small sample size of fights to deal with. But just from what I'm seeing so far, it's leaning me towards the violent side rather than the non-violent side, because we can see right here, while we're getting these big breaks, it's on a 2-fight sample size, and we can see that these lines are priced fairly. They're basically priced right on where they should be for the divisional decision rate and for the divisional over 2.5 rate. We can see the over 2.5 rate, 53% and 49.5%. And here it is at 50 and 54.55. So, they're not moving the overs, Brady, to a place where we should be running to the window to bet them. It does look like the violence props will probably be the way to go, but we need a little more information and we need a few more markets to open here before we can start looking at this.
Yep, fair enough. I would lean violence as well, but this is probably one I'll just be staying away from, just rooting for Ogden to lose this one. So I'm looking forward to the debut of Zell to get it done. And like you said, I mean, losing striking exchanges to Jordan Levitt, nuts.
Yeah,
just absolutely
it's such a bad look, dude.
Yeah, and I was a dumbass with the bet on Trey Ogden. I thought he'd be the better striker.
Well, Brady, don't feel bad, man. I missed that line, and that's the only reason I didn't bet it too. He did take the fight on short notice. We have to keep that in mind. And Levitt's a smart fighter. He doesn't do anything without thinking about it first. So maybe we got to forgive the guy for that. But I would have bet that too had I not missed the line. You got the line, so you were wearing it.
Oh yeah, it was hard to watch. It was hard to watch. But we can move on to the next fight. We have one that I'm not too interested in. We have Luma Boomi going against Denise Gomez. We have the over 2.5 minus 265 on Bet Online. Under 2.5 rounds is plus 205. The fight goes decision minus 240. The fight doesn't go to decision is plus 190. This is one where I'd lean the fight goes to distance, but I would not lay minus 240 to find out, just because I've seen Denise Gomes hurt a ton. She's been dropped a lot. She's been wobbled a lot. Her recoverability is very good. She's very tough, but I do think she's very chinny. It's just, is Luma Boomi going to be, the person to knock her out? Gomez has been knocked out before as well, so that's kind of scary. I don't know. I'm leaning fight goes the distance, but I'm definitely not laying this price tag.
Yeah, I don't think Luma Boomi can bust a grape. I mean, We're talking about 2 of 9 of her fights career as a pro have finished inside the distance, 22.22%. But for Gomez, it's 5 of 7. She's been finished inside the distance, and she's finished 4 of her 6 wins inside the distance. But they're regional scene wins, and it just doesn't mean a lot. Who are these girls that Denise Gomez finished? Plus, she's very young, too. Only 22 years old or 23 or something. So, and she's also the girlfriend of Carol Hossa. So she's working out at Piranha Valley Tudo. She's got a pretty good camp behind her, and she's a good Muay Thai striker facing off against a good Muay Thai striker. So, look, I don't think Denise Gomez is going out there and finishing Loma Boomi. And, I really don't think. Look, this over 2.5 is actually a trifecta bet, Brady. Sure. At minus 245, it's 1.84% better priced than the over 2.5 rate of the division. It's a 29% break because neither one of these ladies has ever finished a fight in the UFC over the implied probability of the line, because 100% of Gomez and Boomi's UFC fights have went the distance. And, they're going over 2.5, 27.15% better than the division does. So it's a trifecta bet, minus 245. We can throw it in the probability parlay. I don't see Gomez finishing Loma Boomi almost ever, really. And Loma's not a finisher at this level. I just don't see it happening. But like you said, you go back and you watch that Milena Dudieva fight, and dude, Gomez is getting dropped nonstop. And the only reason she won that fight in the 3rd round was because Dudieva was so close to finishing her, not just in the 1st, but also in the 2nd, that she gassed herself out. Keep in mind, though, Gomez did take that fight on short notice up a weight class. So take that for what it is. Let's go the over 2.5 at minus 245 and put it in the PRP, because it's a lovely little trifecta bet, even though we've only got a sample size of 6 UFC fights between these two ladies. We don't pass up on those trifecta bets.
No, sir. So yeah, I would lean violence as well. I will be staying away from it, but as far as like a parlay piece, I don't disagree at all. All right, we'll move on to the next fight. We have Aspen Ladd going against Sarah McMahon. We have the over 2.5 at -225. The under 2.5 is +185. The fight goes to decision is -190. The fight doesn't go to decision is +160. When I was looking through the card like last week, this was one of the fights that did stick out in terms of like the numbers. I think we're getting a decent price on this fight doesn't go. But when you kind of look at the fight, I'm kind of leaning for it to go to decision. So it's one of those things where my eyes are telling me the fight goes decision, but the numbers are kind of screaming violence here at +160. Weezy, what is the prop template saying about this one?
Yeah, so the prop template's got these violence props overpriced by just a shade here, 2.1%. So in other words, the divisional finish rate is about 35%. When we subtract the 38.46%, we get a 2.1% overpayment. We get a 5.22% overpayment when we compare the under 2.5 rate for the 35-pound weight class to the divisional finish rate of the or to the divisional under 2.5, or to the implied probability of the line. Sorry. So the fight doesn't go is better priced according to the prop template than the under 2.5 is. And we do see that these ladies are their fights at the UFC level are finishing inside the distance 60% of the time in a 20-fight sample size. So that's pretty good. And they're finishing at a 61.29% rate overall. So their UFC finish rates right on par with their career finish rates. So we know that Ladd and McMahon finish at about a 60% clip, but we're only paying 38.46% for this fight not going to decision. So it's interesting. But like you said, Brady, what does Sarah McMahon do? She's taking women down and then laying on top of them, landing some ground and pound, maybe trying to fish for the occasional arm triangle, but she's not really finishing these ladies, is she? As a matter of fact, usually her fights finish when she runs out of gas if her conditioning isn't there, because she has to push such a wrestling heavy game plan early in fights. So, and we know that Aspen Ladd is a great finisher. For her UFC career, Aspen's finished 3 of her 4 wins inside the distance, and she's been finished in 1 of 3, while Sarah McMahon has been finished in 5 of 6 losses. So Sarah's not the best finisher, 3 of 7, still pretty good for the division, better finish rate than the division as a whole. And Aspen's been fairly durable. The only time she got finished was by Jermaine Durandamy, and she had a horrible weight cut in that fight. But the thing about this one, Brady, that gets me leaning back towards the violent side, even though I think that the stylistic matchup doesn't necessarily lend itself to violence, is Aspen Ladd's weight cuts, man. Yeah. They're not good, dude. They're not good. And don't forget, dude, Sarah McMahon's 42 years old. Is she going to be able to wrestle for a full 3 rounds? You know, especially if Aspen is putting up some resistance to those takedowns. So at +160, overpaying by 2% isn't bad, but underpaying by 21.5% and 23.6% when we're comparing those fighter finish rates to the benchmark for the division and to the implied probability of the line, tells us that that's the side. And when you go over here to the non-violent side, right, and we're overpaying by 25, 23%, 25, 24% here, it's not like the bookies are giving us any fucking incentive to bet these overs. We're overpaying by almost 2% when we compare that implied probability to the goes to decision rate for the division, and we're underpaying by less than 1% here. So even though they're trying to shade us towards the non-violent side, they're not trying hard enough. So I think fight doesn't go at +160. It's actually a solid analytical bet. And boy, if Aspen Ladd looks terrible on the scales again, you're going to love that +160.
I mean, if she's crying on the scales, I mean, that's a must bet. That's an absolute must bet if she's crying on the scales. So yeah, I mean, I would lean towards violence. I'm not laying -190 on the fight goes to decision. I would definitely be much more beyond that +160 side. I don't think I'll get it to it personally, unless Aspen Ladd is crying on the scales, but I would much rather be on that plus money side. All right. So we will move on to the next fight. We have, oh boy.
Yes.
This
Violence.
is violence, 100%, man. We have Joe Pyfer going against Allen Himadovsky. Cannot wait to talk about this one. And we have the fight goes to decision is plus 300 on Bet Online and minus 400 on Bet Online. The over under sit at 1.5 rounds. The over 1.5 plus 145. The under 1.5 is minus 175. So, like I said earlier, I was on the toilet, and I was refreshing the lines, like checking to see what's up. And then I see the under 1.5 for Pyfer Himadovsky at minus 115. And I run to bet it, and I was not able to get it. As soon as I placed bet, it moved to minus 175. So almost got that minus 115. But yeah, I mean, this has violence all day. Looks like they're on it, though. They did their job, minus 400. That is an 80% probability there. I'm going to see what they get the under 2.5 out at. The fight won't start round 3. But yeah, I think this fight does finish under a round. I think it probably finishes in a round. And then also, I wanted to tell you this. I saw a prop that really stuck out to me, and I want you to guess the line on this prop. Are you ready?
Yep.
Allen Himadovsky to win by first round knockout. What do you think it is?
Okay, so what's his money line?
His money line is around plus 330.
Okay, so is it plus 335?
No, not even close. You want to try again?
Dude, if you can get better than plus 1,000 on that, it's you kind of have to bet it. It's his only win condition. What do they have it at?
Plus 2,500.
Whoa, dude, I'm betting that.
Yeah,
That's 1/10 of a unit. I'll flush it down the toilet. Hey, I flushed down 1/10 of a unit on Anton Turkali round 3 just a couple of days ago at plus 4,000. When it didn't cash, I didn't cry. It's 1/10 of a unit, but that's the man's win condition, dude. Himadovsky has got power, and he's knocked out 2 legitimate mixed martial artists in his career, Will Fleury and Ibrahim Mane. Dude, if he lands a big right hand, I'm telling you, dude, there's not a lot of people in the UFC that are going to be able to absorb it. But Joe Pyfer is going to murder this dude.
Oh yeah,
he's going to take him down, and he's going to, like, Himadovsky's going to be wearing him like a cheap suit, and then he's going to get submitted.
Yep, 100%. And then I was also looking at Pyfer inside the distance, but minus 285. Like, come on, Bet Online. Can you do any better than that? What are they doing?
Nope. But yeah, dude, this is a wild fight. But minus 400, if you can get it, that's a parlay piece. Parlay it up, dude. Yeah. This fight almost never goes to decision. Maybe 5 times out of 100, that this thing goes to decision, dude. It's not happening. Pyfer is a much better grappler than Himadovsky. Himadovsky, one of the worst fighters in the entire UFC in any weight class that we have. He's just swinging hammers, You or I could go in there and wind up and take huge and just swing huge hooks. And maybe we might get lucky one time, but I don't think he's going to get lucky at all. I mean, he's 0-3 in the UFC for a reason.
Yeah, he's pretty bad. So I don't know how I'm going to play this fight. I mean, I think I might just sprinkle like a core unit to win 6.5 units on that freaking Himadovsky first round knockout plus 2,500. Like you said, it should be literally his money line. Like, that's how he wins. There's no other way.
No other way. Yeah. He has no skills to be able to win minutes at this level. None. I mean, absolutely none. It's impossible. Against a guy in Body Bags Pyfer who's literally training over at Renzo Gracie Philly, and those guys are unfucking defeated at the UFC level right now. So, yeah, man, it's although I do believe that Damon Jackson's going to hand these guys their first loss as he carves through Pat Sabatini, but we'll talk about that later, my friend. This one is violence, minus 400. That under 1.5 at minus 175, as we can see here, Brady, it's overpriced by 27%, but it probably hits, and it's probably a parlay piece as well, man.
Yep. I mean, I couldn't agree more. Not much more to say on that one. This one is about as violent as you can get. Yep. All right. We will move on to the next fight. Then we have Trevin Giles going against Luis Cosey. And yeah, speaking of violence, man, we have another violent spot, but the odds aren't really indicating that at all. We have the fight goes to decision on 5 dimes plus 130. The fight doesn't go at minus 170. The over under set at 1.5 rounds and 2.5 rounds. So on Bet Online, they have the over 1.5 minus 155, the under 1.5 plus 125, The over 2.5 on 5 dimes is plus 105, and the under 2.5 rounds is minus 135. I don't get it. Have they ever watched a Luis Cosey fight? I don't think so.
Never. But just like Yanni the Greek has never watched any of the fighters fight that he bets on, a lot of these guys that are making books, that are making lines at these bookmakers, they're not watching fights either. They're tracking data. And data is good for benchmarks, but we have to use our eyes as well, because the stylistic matchup does dictate how fighters are going to fight and whether they're going to push a game plan that lends itself to finishing, or whether they're going to push a minute winning type of game plan. And Luis Cosey, the dude is not a minute winner. Okay. He's trying to punt your head into the upper deck. And most of the time he's successful. And I mean, he could still be undefeated. That Palatnikov fight could have been stopped. And a lot of people trashed Cosey's conditioning there. You show me one fighter who wouldn't have been gassed after that first round that he put out, man. And then he kept fighting. So the dude is super tough as well, super durable in my opinion. It's just that, the adrenaline dump with your UFC debut that comes along with fighting a fight at the pace that Palatnikov Cosey fight took place at, anybody's going to get tired, you guys, plain and simple. But another violent spot, Brady, while we see that where these lines are priced, which are priced ridiculously, in my opinion. And let me just show you why. We go down here, we can see that Luis Cosey is a killer be killed fighter. And as a matter of fact, he's got a great fucking dance partner here with a guy with more than twice as many fights as Luis Cosey, who's finishing 83.33% of his fights. And the guy's not durable. He's been finished in all 4 of his losses. Luis Cosey's been finished in all 1 of his losses. 5 of 5 of their losses inside the distance. 18 of 21 of their wins inside the distance. 88.5%. And we're paying 63% for the fight doesn't go, and 57% for the under 2.5. So fight doesn't go to decision at minus 170 would be an auto bet. If that was released right now on Bet Online, I might even be max betting it.
Yep. So I know our guy Propaholic got the minus 135 as well. Hopefully, I would love that minus 135 for that under. And I would love minus 170, like anything better than minus 200. It's a smash spot for this fight. So I'm going to be taking a look at the lines on this one because it's definitely sticking out for some violence.
Without question, man. These are like, I'm putting little asterisks next to them on my little sheet here that I'm writing on, because this is, this show, it helps me just as much as it helps you, Brady, and as much as it helps everybody that's out there watching on the MMA Engine right now. This is the work that we have to put in when we've got to find out what spots we're going to grab. There's 14 fights. There's a lot of good spots, but some are just priced better than others, and it's our job to show you what those are.
Yeah, 100%. We are finding a lot of violent spots that are just mispriced this week, just big mistakes. So I'm hoping they make a big mistake and put like the Giles Cosey fight doesn't go at minus 170. Please Bet Online. Do it. Do it. We're waiting. Please. All right, let's move on to the next fight. We have Damon Jackson going against Pat Sabatini. This is a really interesting one from a time prop perspective. We talked a little bit about the time props last night on Stat Tickers, and we were talking about how both these guys are just very, very good finishers. It's just stylistically, I kind of see this as a grappler versus grappler matchup, and I kind of think their grappling just cancels each other out, and they're all over it. I mean, minus 245 on bet on 5 dimes, minus 265 on Bet Online for the over 2.5. The fight goes minus 210 on Bet Online. The fight doesn't go as plus 170. So I was leaning this fight to go to decision, but they are making you pay. And both these guys are very good finishers. So I think I'm going to stay away from this one. But, my eyes are telling me this fight is going to go the distance.
Where do they have the over 2.5 at right now?
Minus 265.
Ooh. Wow, dude, that's a horrible price. What's the under 2.5?
I know, right? Plus 205. Plus 205. Like at this point, I would probably just bet violence because both these guys are so dangerous.
Dude, at plus 205, I mean, look at the prop template, dude. 5% break when we compare the divisional under 2.5 rate, which is sitting at about 38%. We're only paying 32%. When we take the under 2.5 rate of these two fighters at the UFC level, we see that they're under 2.5 50% of the time. We're only paying 32.7% of the here. And when we compare the fighter under 2.5 rates to the divisional under 2.5 rate, these guys are better than that by 12%. So a plus 205 for an under 2.5 in a men's featherweight fight, that's just screaming that we have to bet that. We might, and let's look at the numbers. Dude, Damon Jackson's got an 85% finish rate in his wins and 100% finish rate in his losses. That is 81.5% of his 27 professional fights have finished inside the distance. Dude, this is one of the this is a big overreaction, Brady. This is a big overreaction. And I think this line has went entirely too far. It's not a parlay piece by any stretch of the imagination at plus 205, but it's a bet that I'm going to be making. And if I can get under 2.5 at plus 205, I have to bet that.
Yeah, I mean, it's good. I mean, it's a good line for just how these guys finish. I mean, you take a look at Damon Jackson, 86% finish rate, Pat Sabatini, 71% finish rate, and then their losses too, like Damon Jackson getting finished in every single loss. Yep, I would lean violence as well, and it is something I might be sprinkling also. Yeah, look, the fight, the under 2.5 was at plus 215 even at one point as well. Plus 215. Wow. So, yeah, I think they are overreacting a little bit, man, because both these guys are dangerous.
Let's talk about line movement, though. Where did the over 2.5 open, and then where did it go? Can you tell us that?
Yeah, the over 2.5 opened up at minus 210. It went to minus 245, and it's currently minus 265.
Yeah, so 72.6 implied probability, but it opened at minus 210, which is 67. So that's a 5% move in implied probability that the market took this to. But it is minus 270, did you say?
Like minus 265 now.
65. Okay. Yeah, so that's a big move in implied probability. And look at what the prop template's telling us. We're overpaying by 10.5% when we compare that to the benchmark. We're overpaying by 22.6% when we compare that to these guys' 50% rate of going over 2.5. They only go over 2.5 50% of the time, and they're asking us to pay 72%. So these overs, while people are using their eyes, they're not looking at the data to realize that they're horrifically overpaying for this. And dude, Damon Jackson is a violent man in that cage. If he's not finishing you, he's getting finished. And in some of the fights where he has finished his opponents, he damn near got finished himself. So love this plus 205 number, and I'm going to be betting this.
Yeah, and Damon Jackson's last 14 fights, only 2 have went the distance in his last 14.
And who are they against? Do you have it in front of you? One of them was the most recent one, right? Or no, not the most recent.
The one that went the distance. Yeah, one went the distance was Dan Argueta, his most recent one.
Yeah,
and then Charles Rosa. Other than that, they're all finishes.
Yeah, and you're not finishing Rosa without a rifle.
You're not.
You know, so yeah, that's. I think it's a great line. I think it's severely underpriced, and I think that at plus 205. You don't have to put a lot of units on that to have a good day. So that's what I'm looking at here. We're finding some great spots, man.
I like it. I'll be on that one as well. All right. Let us move on to the next fight. We have Anthony Fluffy Hernandez going against Marc-Andre Barriault. Some interesting line movement on this one. So we have the over-under set at 2.5 rounds right now on Bet Online. The under 2.5 open at plus 170. It is now minus 115. The over 2.5 open up at minus 210. It is currently minus 215. So massive line movement on violence. We now have it a straight pick'em for this under and over 2.5 rounds. Bet Online does not have out the fight goes or fight doesn't go. So we'll take a look at the 5 dimes for that. 5 dimes has the fight goes plus 105 and the fight doesn't go minus 145. Is there anything sticking out on this fight here?
Well, what sticks out originally, Brady, is the fact that they priced the under 2.5 in the Fluffy Hernandez fight at plus 170. Is that really open the under 2.5?
Yep.
Let's just take a look at that. 12.5% underpriced when we compare it to the divisional under 2.5 rate. 20% underpriced when we compare the finishers, the under 2.5 rate of the two fighters involved, which is 57.15%. And so, yeah, it would have been such a great bet. And Hernandez brings this pace with him, that's very, very hard for anybody to hold up to. But at minus 115 now, it looks like we're overpaying by about 4%, but we're still underpaying by about 3.5% and 7.5% when we compare the fighter finish rates to the implied probability of the line and to the divisional under 2.5 rate. So it's not horribly overpriced here. But we go over here to the non-violence bets, still overpriced on all three here at minus 115. And we're overpriced by about 3.7. Yeah, dude, we missed it. And the market took a line that was underpriced with that under 2.5 and moved it to the area where now it's kind of right where it should be. As great of a fight as this is, I don't think the lines are making any exciting places for us to put our money on this one, unfortunately.
Yep. Yeah, that plus 170 would have been nice. I didn't even see it until you said something about it. And by the time, I looked at it, it was like plus 105, something like that. And then a couple seconds later, it went to minus 115. So yeah, I didn't notice it up until you said something. So yeah, missed out on that one. I think I'm just fine with sitting back and watching this fight because it's going to be a very, very good fight.
Agreed. And yeah, and I think when I brought it to your attention, it might have been around plus 120. But even there, with Barrios' durability, right, you have to still worry about that. And Barrios got the kind of conditioning that could maybe he loses to Anthony Hernandez here, but he probably doesn't get finished by him because the dude is that kind of durable. And it's not like Hernandez has got this great punching power on the feet, really. It's the pace and the grappling heavy pace that he brings that makes him such a good fighter. So very interesting fight, an awesome fight to watch. But when you watch where these lines are right now, I'm not seeing a lot of opportunity.
Yep, I'm right there with you. Speaking of opportunity, we have Tanner Bozer going against Rodrigo Nacimento. And this is one that they kind of messed up earlier in the day. So right now, they have the over-under set at 2.5 rounds. The over 2.5 is plus 140 on BetOnline. Under 2.5 is minus 170. The fight goes decision plus 165. The fight doesn't go decision is minus 205. So yeah, they opened up the under 2.5 at minus 108 and started to look into it. You shout out to you because you're the one that brought that up, and I didn't even see it up until you said something. And they start to look into it, and it's a striker versus grappler matchup, right? Nacimento's been knocked out in his only loss. Nacimento black belt in BJJ. If Nacimento gets on top of Bozer, we talked about that big ass last night, right? If he gets that big ass on Bozer's not getting up. He probably gets subbed. And on the flip side, on the feet, we're in the small cage as well. Bozer can very well knock out Nacimento, who's not the best striker and who has been knocked out before. So stylistically, I love it. It's heavyweight division. I love it. I love me some violence here. But yeah, these prices have moved. But I will say, on BetOnline, they have the fight doesn't go at minus 205. And on 5 dimes, they have the fight doesn't go at minus 300. So BetOnline still has minus 205 there. I think that's still a pretty solid look. But that under 2.5 earlier in the day was pretty nice.
Yeah, we've got a decent sample size of fights for these guys. And check it out, my man. What do we got here? We got a killer be killed fighter in Rodrigo Nacimento. 10 fights, all 10 finished inside the distance. 1 loss, all 9 wins. Now, Bozer is very durable. He's only been finished in 1 of 8 losses, right? But he's finished 13 of his 20 wins. So he's got a 50% finish rate. But he's the kind of guy, Nacimento, we love betting violence props when we know somebody's finishing inside the distance all the time. And oftentimes when you do have a finisher against a non-finisher, it's whoever's pace takes over the fight. And usually it's that finisher's pace that winds up being the more dominant pace, the pace that the fight takes place at, due to the fact that we got one guy in there that's a little more bloodthirsty than the other. But even at the UFC level, we're getting a 63.64% finish rate right here. 7 of their 11 combined fights have finished inside the distance. And we're only paying 67% here. So it's not bad. It's not horribly overpriced. And we get to have that in our minds that we've got a kill or be killed fighter here. But this opened, Brady, at minus 108, right?
Yes. And it was there for a while. It was there for almost an hour or so, a little over.
And and if you're a member of my Patreon and you get this prop template, that's what we do. We put that number in there, and then you see this 7% underpayment, 11.7% underpayment, 5% underpayment. I'm getting it under 2.5 at 52% in a heavyweight fight where one of the guys is 10 of 10 on all of his fights finishing inside the distance. So this is a great violent spot, but the line is now moved to sanity. But just because it's moved to sanity, it doesn't mean that it's not parlayable here at minus 205. I think that this is absolutely a parlayable spot. If we were to look at the Tapology profile of Nacimento, I'm not sure if Rodrigo's ever even been to a third round in his career. So at minus 205, I think that this is parlayable, something that we should put in the PRP here because it's not really overpriced in comparison to the under 2.5. We just get those extra 2.5 minutes in a heavyweight fight. Let's do that. Put it in the PRP. Fight doesn't go to decision at minus 205.
So fun fact, Nacimento has never been the distance.
Okay.
Nacimento has never been over 2.5 rounds. Nacimento has never seen the third round, and Nacimento has been over 1.5 rounds only one time.
There you go, guys. There you go. And now you know why I smashed the under 2.5 at minus 108 for 2 units, because that was just a mispriced line. And not only does the analytics from the prop template help, but we can also look at the prop template and be like, we got a kill or be killed fighter here? Oh, hell yeah, we do. 10 out of 10. So now not only is it underpriced, but we're getting a kill or be killed fighter, which is something that we love. Smash spot. I smashed it when it came out, and it was there for a minute. Hopefully some of you guys got on it, but still at minus 205, I think we can parlay this thing.
Yes, sir. All right. I like it. We'll move on to the next fight. We have Andre Fili going against Bill Algio, and we've been talking so much violence on the show so far. I mean, I think it's time to settle down a little bit, and let's talk some non-violence here, because we have the over-under set at 2.5 rounds, the over 2.5, minus 210, the under 2.5 is plus 170. The fight goes decision, minus 190. The fight doesn't go plus 155. Honestly, I don't hate that minus 210 there for that over 2.5. Both guys are super, super tough. I don't really see either guy finishing the other guy. I think the over 2.5 is where I'd look. Let's see if the prop template lines up on it.
Yeah, well, dude, check it out. I think that over 2.5 at some point got up to like minus 260 or minus 270. If you look at the line movement for that, where did it get up to?
It got up to like, let me just double check here. So it went from minus 210 to like minus 255.
Wow. Yeah, and that tells you people are looking for this fight to go over. I even told you that if I could find an over 2.5 at like minus 170, that I was going to smash the shit out of it. Wasn't even close to getting it there. Yeah. It was wishful thinking, but sometimes you get lucky and you get the right line. But Algio is a guy who's incredibly durable, and he's not a finisher. He's just not a finisher at this level. And Philly's a guy who's pretty durable himself. But when we look here at the rates for these guys, only 54% of their pro fights have finished inside the distance. And both of these guys are finishing at the same rate. They're both about 54% finishers, for and against. And then at the UFC level, it's only 1/3 of their fights that are finishing. And with Algio's fights have only finished inside the distance 1 out of 6 times. And that one time was a man who was literally dying from exhaustion after 2 minutes. So Algio, not a finisher. And because of that, and because of his durability and his sliminess on the ground, it is impossible to lock in a submission against Bill Algio. I thought that triangle that Burns had him in, that there was no way that he was getting out of that. And he just, like a greased up deaf guy, was just unbelievable, in terms of his ability to get out of those submissions that Burns was throwing up. So, and Algio's got a chin on him. So over 2.5 at minus 210, only being overpriced by 5.67%, only being overpriced by about 1% when we compare it to these guys' finish rates. I like that. I like that. And I think that that's the best bet for this fight is that over 2.5 at minus 210.
Yep, I like it. I think it's a good parlay piece as well. I could see myself parlaying the over 2.5 in the Feely Algio fight with the fight doesn't go in the Himadovsky fight and getting like almost even money for that.
Yeah, and that's such a great look right there. It's a great first couple of legs for the parlay because, man, do you feel good about Piper Himadovsky not going the full 15. Am I right?
Yes.
So, yeah, it's a good spot, man.
100%. All right. Let us keep moving on to the next fight. We have another violent spot. We have Chidi and Jaquani going against Gregory, Rodriguez, and the bookies once again made a mistake. I do want to bring this up. So on Bet Online right now, they have the over under set at like 2.5. So on Bet Online, it says that the over 2.5 is they took it off. But we remember earlier, like they had the under 2.5 at like minus 240, right? Like minus 260, right?
Yeah, it was, as a matter of fact, I think it was minus 275, and then it bumped down to minus 240.
Yeah.
But yeah, minus 240 is where the under 2.5 was. And then where did they open the fight doesn't go?
So yeah, it was sitting there. It was I saw the under 2.5 at minus 240, and then they open up the fight doesn't go at minus 180. I'm not the best at math, but it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, so let's just explain that to the people, Brady, right? So the fights go under 2.5 49.57% of the time at 185 pounds in a 3-round fight. And they don't go to decision about 55% of the time, right? So anytime you have an under 2.5 line, you should have to pay about 5% more in implied probability for the fight doesn't go to decision, because we can see that the probability does go up by about 5% when we go from under 2.5 up to fight doesn't go to decision. And we see here, this line is priced at 70.59%, so we should be paying about 75.59%. Instead, we're paying less than that at 66.67%. That is what we call an inversion in the markets, and it's an opportunity. So I smashed the fight doesn't go to decision at minus 180 for 3.6 units when I saw it open up at a lower implied probability than the under 2.5, which was at the same book, mind you. So I don't know how they do that. Maybe they should hire me so that they don't get screwed putting out dumbass lines. But hey, them getting screwed means me making money, so I'm good with it. This is a great violent spot. We could tell that when we look at these guys' combined records, 33 of their 46 combined pro fights have finished inside the distance. That's almost 72%. And at the UFC level, Chidi's fights have finished 100% of the time, and Rodriguez has finished 60% of the time. 75% of their fights are finishing inside the distance. At minus 200, we're only paying 66%. That's an 8.33% break. And these guys are finishing at a much higher rate than what the division finishes at, because these guys are finishing at a 75% rate, but the division finishes at a 55% rate. So they're finishing at a 20% rate better than the division does. They finish at a 8.33% better rate than what the implied probability of the line is. And yeah, we're overpaying by about 11.7% here for the fight doesn't go, but we're overpaying by 21% for the under 2.5, and that even happens less of the time. So minus 200 is still bettable here for a violent spot. It's not overpriced yet. It will get overpriced because they moved the under 2.5 to the under 1.5 in this fight, and even that is being overpriced by about 7.8%, but it's still underpriced when we compare it to the fighter under 1.5 rates, and we compare the fighter under 1.5 rates to the divisional under 1.5 rates. Actually a pretty nice little break there. When we go over here to the non-violence lines, we see a lot of big negative numbers here, which indicates that, yes, we're getting a little bit of a break here when we compare these prices to the benchmark, but we're going to be holding our breath because these are two very violent dudes here.
Yep. So yeah, I got on at minus 180 as well. To be honest, I would also bet it at minus 200, and that minus 200 is still there. But there is a prop that stuck out to me by a mile, and I think it's probably the most mispriced prop on the entire card. And I'm curious to hear your thoughts on it. So right now, the money line is minus 110 a piece, but if you take a look at the scorecards equals no action, you would think it's should be a pick 'em, right? Minus 110 each. Someone who's getting knocked out here and probably early. They have Jaquani scorecards equals no action at plus 165 when the money line is minus 110. So I think that should be closer to a pick 'em here. I think they're both just as likely to knock the other guy out. Chidi's had like a career resurgence. He's looking like an absolute killer. He's in like the best form of his career. So I also took a shot on that scorecards equals no action for Chidi at plus 165. So if Chidi gets a finish here, I will be rolling.
Yeah, and Chidi's been finished a ton in his career. 6 out of his 7 losses have come inside the distance. But when you talk to him about what that was, it just seems like he's had that resurgence. He seems to give a shit about fighting again, and he didn't seem to care when he was losing inside the distance all the time. And now it's starting to show. He's 3-0 at the UFC level, and he's finishing dudes that you don't finish. Nobody finishes Marc-Andre Barriault. And Jaquani was the first to do it. And the thing about Rodriguez is this guy's willing to throw down. He's willing to stand in front of dudes that he's much better grapplers than and just throw hands because he's so bricked up that I think he's afraid to wrestle because I think if he does, he would probably gas out. So I think he's going to give Jaquani the fight that he wants. And if he stands in front of Chidi, man, he's probably going to get knocked out. But love the violence prop here. I smashed it for 3.6 units at minus 180, and it's definitely still bettable here at minus 200.
Sounds good to me. I like it. All right, so one more fight left. We have the main event. We have Cory Sandhagen going against Song Yadong. We have the over set at 4.5 rounds. The over 4.5 minus 155. Under 4.5 is plus 125. The fight goes decision minus 135. The fight doesn't go decision plus 105. It seems like a pretty clear fight goes to decision for me. Just something I'm not really running towards the window for. 25 minutes. Both guys are going to probably have their moments. I think it's one I'm going to stay away from, but I do lean towards the non-violence aspect of things. What are you seeing in this fight?
All right, so we've got a bantamweight fight that's 5 rounds. So we're going into the analytics tab here, which is a 5-round analytics tab. So we've got 30 bantamweight fights since the year 2013 that have been scheduled for 5 rounds. 18 of them are finishing inside the distance. That's 60%. The fight goes to decision 40% of the time. So we see here that we're paying 57% for the fight goes to decision, but these fights are only going to decision 40% of the time. So we're actually overpaying by about 17.5% when we compare it to the benchmark. These things are going over 6 or finishing inside the distance 60% of the time, and we're only paying 48.78. So we're getting about a 10% break there in terms of the analytics. And then if we look at Song and Sandhagen combined at the UFC level, they're finishing at about a 55% rate. What I like, though, is that Sandhagen's never been finished except for by Aljamain Sterling, and it was in a submission. And Song Yadong has never been finished in his UFC career, only been finished once on the regional scene, and he was probably like 16 when that happened. So these guys are both very durable. So they're definitely trying to get us to bet these underlines by underpricing it in comparison to the benchmark. But I still kind of feel like minus 135 is probably the way to go. Maybe even take the fight starts round 5 at a little bit better price than that. A little bit worse price, I should say, a little bit more expensive. But I really don't see these guys finishing each other. But we also have to remind ourselves that Song Yadong's never been scheduled for 5 rounds. So how is he going to handle that, especially against somebody like Sandhagen, who's been there 5 rounds against Peter Yan, 5 rounds against TJ Dillashaw. The guy's been, doing this a little bit longer and working training camps to get ready for 5-round fights. This is the first time that Song Yadong's had to do so. So I hate this fight from a time prop perspective. I mean, where these lines are right now, they feel like they're perfectly priced to me.
Yep, I do agree, and nothing really sticking out for me either. So think we can just stay away from that one. But yeah, we went over 14 fights, Wheezy, and we talked about just like a shitload of spots that just stuck out, mispriced, lots of violence. So do you want to kind of quickly recap some of the spots that stuck out, and then I'll kind of quickly recap some of the spots that stuck out for me.
Yeah, dude, I've got 12 lines written down here that I feel are actually bettable. And it's different every week. Like last week, we didn't find a lot that we liked. And by the way, my apologies to everybody that was on the probability parlay. What a kick in the pants to lose it with 10 seconds left for the over 2.5 in the Aldana Chason fight. And we lose it due to an up kick to the liver. A finish that we've never seen in the UFC ever. And that's what cost us our probability parlay. But we didn't like a lot of lines last week, and I actually had no time prop bets on last week's card. And this is absolutely what I do here. I find time props and I bet the shit out of them. But this week's different, man. Van Camp Mata, under 2.5, minus 140. Gravely Basharat, fight doesn't go to decision, minus 145. Robertson Agapova, under 2.5, minus 140. Zell Huber Ogden, fight doesn't go to decision, minus 140. Loma Gomez, over 2.5, minus 245. McMahon Ladd, juicy plus money number at plus 160 for the fight doesn't go to decision. That appears to be underpriced. Pifer Himadovsky, fight doesn't go to decision. Beautiful parlay piece at minus 400. And I even think the under 1.5 at minus 175 is parlayable. Giles Cosey, fight doesn't go to decision, minus 170. Under 2.5, minus 135. Both bettable. Jackson Sabatini, under 2.5 at plus 205. Bettable, but not a parlay piece. Nacimento Bozer, fight doesn't go to decision, minus 205. Potential parlay piece. Philly Algio, over 2.5, minus 210. Potential parlay piece. Jaquani Rodriguez, fight doesn't go to decision, minus 200. Potential parlay piece. Could I keep talking? Yes. Will I? No. I just gave you 12 spots that stick out.
Keep going. Let's go all day. For me, yeah, a ton sticking out for me as well. Starting with I like the Robertson violence, Agapova violence. I like the I don't mind the Basharat Gravely violence. I haven't bet it yet, but that was one I'm highly considering. I do like the Cosey Giles. I'm refreshing my book for that. The under 2.5. It's out there at minus 135 on some books. If I can get minus 135, I'm smashing it. I love that spot a lot. I did. I like that the Jackson Sabatini under 2.5 rounds at plus 205. Such a great price there for two great finishers and a killer be killed fighter in Damon Jackson. Nacimento Bozer, Violence, Himadovsky Pifer. By the way, shout out to Brandon, Propaholic in the chat. He said that on DraftKings, they have the under 1.5 at minus 160. Minus 160. So even better price there. So I love that. I smashed it. And I think it's a great spot. And then also we have Algio Philly. I love the over. This is the only over I'll be playing this week, but over 2.5, minus 210. Maybe get it on minus 200 or better on a different book. Chidi and Jaquani, Gregory Rodriguez. I like the fight doesn't go. It's still there at minus 200, which doesn't make sense. And then that's about it for me. But yeah, tons of spots sticking out. I have a ton of bets already, and I'm looking to add a couple more. Just still waiting for that Cosey Giles fight doesn't go to come out.
All right, so for the probability parlay, let's start with Pifer Himadovsky fight doesn't go. Okay?
Yep.
Second leg, Philly Algio over 2.5 minus 210.
Yep, it's minus 118 as of now.
I like that for a probability parlay. And then for the second leg of the PRP,
yep,
I want Jaquani Rodriguez fight doesn't go to decision at minus 200.
Yep.
And I also want Nacimento Bozer fight doesn't go to decision at minus 205.
And that is coming out to plus 312.
Love that. Those are two great late. And then we'll have our guy UFC Egg. Shout out UFC Egg, who's been putting together that beautiful probability PRP graphic every week. He can figure out the rest. But I still like after that the Giles Cosey violence. Love it. The Zell Ogden violence, I like that. The Robertson Agapova violence, like that. Van Kamp Mata, Gravely Basharat violence, all that stuff belongs in there. It's a great week for time props, and I plan to make a bunch of money on them.
I agree. Hopefully it's a violent night. And yeah, we're in the small cage as well. So it just leads to more violence there. So we did it. Went a little bit longer than usual, but rightfully so on a card like this. Do want to shout out Kiwi though with the $10 donation. Appreciate you, Kiwi, saying we appreciate you hanging out, supporting the show, supporting the channel. It does mean a lot. Kiwi. Shout out to Kiwi and shout out to all of you guys in the chat for hanging out with us here on a Monday. Weezy, let the people know where they can find you, what you have going on throughout the rest of your week.
Yeah, so tomorrow night on my channel, Uncle Weezy, I'll be doing a full card breakdown called Just a Tip with Uncle Weezy. We will break down all 14, potentially 15 of these fights if we get a replacement for Sadiq Youssef. Finish with Uncle Weezy's ass shaving of the week. Then you can also find me Wednesday night on my channel, Uncle Weezy, for Ask Weezy. 10:30 Central Time. You can ask me any questions about my database, my prop template, matchup stats, all that stuff. You can also find me on Pub Sports Radio on Wednesday with Brady, with Gordo, and with Monk for the DFS show. And right here on the MMA Engine every Monday night for Probability. We got to stack cash tickets like flapjacks for UFC Vegas 60. And I think we just gave you a great start on how to do that this week, man. So I'm fired up for this card. I'm going to have as much action on this card as I've had in a long time.
Yeah, me too, man. I mean, just so many spots sticking out. So it should be a good night, hopefully. All right. You guys can follow me on Twitter, DFS_numbers, Instagram, DFS by the numbers, Pub Sports Radio, MMA Engine, DFS by the numbers on YouTube. I should be getting my full card breakdown out tomorrow. And then also some Dana White's Contender Series out tomorrow as well. So leave a like on your way out, subscribe. Appreciate all the support. And good luck for UFC Vegas 60.